Hello and welcome to my talk. My name is NATALIYA REMEZ. I'm originally from Ukraine, actually. But currently I'm living in Sweden and I'm working as an agile team coach in a company called IZ. This is the talk I was inspired actually to talk about psychological safety in this particular environment and conference because I believe this is something that we as agile coaches of the next generations should actually be focused on. So here you see that I actually worked for more than 10 years in tech overall in different organizations and in different roles. But 7 years I was mainly working as a developer, so I'm kind of that kind of coach, which is experienced with the tech part of things. So this is why this talk might be a little bit more technical than others, but I hope you will enjoy it. And also important thing which I wanted to mention that recently, since I'm living in Sweden for 3 years, I became an organizer of the Go Agile Stockholm meetup. So if you ever will consider to be in Sweden and participate in some kind of meetups, please come to our meetup. We're available on meetup.com and you will have a link in the end of my presentation. Okay, so let's move on. I decided to start with actually this picture of the SMS message which was sent this year, in the beginning of this year, on January actually. It was sent on the United States state of Hawaii, and it was saying that there is a ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Probably you heard about it before, but might be not. The danger of this was that it was sent basically through all the networks, all the mobile operators, and all the communications channels on the Hawaii state. And problem with that was that actually, sorry, I don't see, okay. And the problem with that was actually it was sent by mistake, and in 38 minutes after it was sent, it was another message saying that it's a false alarm, which was very strange. And people actually start evacuating from the Hawaii, whatever they want, and it was a rush, and it was a big boom on all the networks, and people was afraid to die, actually. But this message was sent by mistake, and actually can see what happened, and you can see that it was a human mistake, basically. The operator, which was changing on that time of the schedule of their kind of agenda, they actually press a wrong link on this list. So instead of pressing, as far as I remember, instead of pressing this, he pressed the wrong link. But the problem with that is basically that probably if you will see the screen, you will be lost. And the message of such an importance, you would like to have one red button or whatever, but probably not the list of the links to some pages. And and actually there was a lot of rumors on the Twitter that it's like, isn't it a problem with UX design, or isn't it a problem with the software they're using? But in the end, there was a person to blame, unfortunately. And this article is saying that actually employee responsible for this mistake was temporarily reassigned from his job. The problem with that, though, was that after several attempts to actually communicate with him and talk more about what really happens and why he did that and why he made this awful mistake, he actually was so in stress that if you will see it's on January 26th, so it's like in a month after the incident. So it was saying that employee who sent Hawaii's false missile alarm not cooperating. So basically this guy gone mad and he just said to everyone, I don't want to say anything, I'm not feeling safe, and I don't want to be exposed to this anymore. Of course he was fired, and of course he is not having a great career after that. But this is a perfect example of why safety, psychological safety, is important in current, actually nowadays. I want to talk more about culture of blame according to this. And imagine if you if you were that employee and you would be working in some kind of environment where you can actually trust your boss or trust your colleague, and you can talk about maybe we can change the interface, maybe we can improve, and maybe we can have a court or I don't know, red button in the future. But instead, he was following the rules, which was said before, and he was actually in continuous fear, and probably the situation showed that you will be blamed, even though it's not your fault in the end, because we all are humans. So probably also you know that if there is no problems, usually there are plenty of people who wants to be in charge of something. So if something good happen, then yeah, it's me, it's my kind of achievement as a manager. But if something is wrong, usually we're finding the person who is the reason of something being wrong. And we're blaming a lot during our day-to-day job and day-to-day life. So, of course, we have a fear of fail. And, of course, as a humans, we always have a lot of fears. But, like, yeah, I decided to show it in one simple image, which is actually the artist, like, back to the long time ago. Actually, there was a picture, which was, of course, originally not called Git blame, but I thought that it's showing how the blame is actually happening usually. We even as developers use this Git blame, and we kind of like to use this word in our day-to-day life, which is scary. Yeah, and as I said before, we're full of fears, and there are plenty of fears which are already investigated, and actually this is a psychological part of our fears. It's injustice, pain, love and intimacy, rejection, and of course fear of death. So we're full of pains and fears. So back to what is psychological safety. I know that there was a talk before when we was talking about Spotify, and they showed interesting slides about how they support psychological safety in their environment. But I wanted more to get back to the original explanation on what is psychological safety. And I actually like this one from Harvard professor Amy Edmondson. She was saying that psychological safety is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. So back to my first slides and examples, this is exactly what's the problem nowadays. Yeah, so of course all of us deep in our soul want to be successful, want to be happy, want to come to our day-to-day job and say, whoa, I so much like doing this stuff, I so much like to see you around me. This is so fun to work together with such a professional and well-behaved people and great people overall. So I would imagine at some point that we will be living in this world when we have like successful collaboration, high-performance teams, and general happiness us as humans. So I decided that I will split my talk to two parts. One would be some kind of a recommendation based on my previous experience on how we can improve, actually enable safety in our environments, but more managerial level of practices. And also I will have slides regarding engineering practices which we can employ to improve the safety in our environment. So this is the management practices. First, I think that it's quite important that we model curiosity. And this is again back to the example which I provided about the missile alarm. That if, let's say, I would be an employee, probably with experience in development, I would rather go to my boss and say, can we improve this interface? Can we maybe hire a super designer or consultant or whatever, and just improve and maybe have a big button or whatever. But again, I would be curious. I would be interested to change something in my work environment so that it will be easy for everyone to work. And for me, first of all, of course. So this is why I actually like this quote. I don't remember from whom it is, because it was one of my friends who actually originally talked about it on the previous talks and meetups. It's saying if you believe you already know what the other person is thinking, then you are not ready to have a conversation. I know that probably some of you are Russian speaking mostly, but conversation, this is why I want to add important notice that conversation in here means that it's a dialogue. So it's not like you speaking only, but you have a feedback through the dialogue. So remember this, especially when you will be, let's say, met with some situation with your colleague who did something wrong, or he didn't know, or she didn't know. Something was wrong. So just repeat this sentence instead of your brain, that you can't stop, you can't think of other person as you know why he or she did this. Do you know who this guy is? Yes. Yes. And who is he in charge of? Or what's his main?
Production system.
Yes, thank you. Good. This is another practice which actually I encourage you to employ in your day-to-day job. It's called root cause analysis, and it was actually invented by Taiichi Ono back to this year. And he actually applied it to the whole production line, to the engineers who was working on that production line. So if something was wrong or something was not according to the plan, he actually asked those 5 questions, which is the part of root cause analysis. Probably some of you heard about it, but if not, you can easily Google it, and it's everywhere almost. And there are even examples in connection to Toyota production model, and also in connection to other circumstances, also to IT incidents, for example. But it's basically getting the root cause by asking why, and why continuously. Yeah, another practice which I actually, because I'm working, even though I'm coach, I'm working at some point as a manager to my teams, to my colleagues. I employ this practice a lot because I always try to wear their sneakers, let's say. I always try to imagine, okay, so if I wear him or her, or if she or he wear me, how do I feel? Why do I do this? Or why do I might be frustrated? Or things like that. So I'm usually referred to this picture. Like, all of us are the same in the end. We have all the same fears. We have all the same struggles. And sometimes we even have all the same ideas for improvement. So why not to ask yourself, how do you feel? What would be my feeling if I were him or her? So, another one suggestion is to actually frame problems as a learning experiments and not execution tactics. What does it mean? Probably you heard about practices like postmortems and not blameless postmortems. It was currently it's actually hired by a lot of companies. I would say that we at Izettle also using this recently, and we think that it's very beneficial. But when it comes to actually having this workshop of postmortems, it's important that everyone feels safe in this environment. Otherwise, it will not give any results. You will just blame the persons, and this is it. And persons will continuously actually they start hide from you all the information because they will be afraid that you're judging them, and that there is no safe to say truth, actually. Another one is safely fail quickly. This is my favorite picture. So I think that important thing, I remember there was a talk yesterday also about experimenting in the product development, which I think is connected to this, because it's saying that you'd better not to have requirements, but you'd better have an ideas and experimentation. And if you experiment and if you fail, it's always easy to pivot or change the direction than to wait when you will have everything, a perfect environment, perfect conditions to build something, and then you actually fail, but it will hurt you a lot, and probably will hurt a lot of your budget or the money you spent on your business idea. So important here is, again, not only the technical level of things, is to quickly learn, not to blame, and actually pivot if needed, or change the idea, or change your behavior, or change the way you are doing things, actually. So, yes, and this one, I think I struggled a lot because I was very young some time ago, and I was always like very, very angry when someone was doing something not according to my ideals, or my feeling of how things should work, actually. And then I realized that I can't fix people. You just need, again, to repeat yourself. You can't fix them. But you can fix systems and environments around those people. So if you will see, let's say that, again, you have an environment when everyone are afraid to say truth, or everyone are actually blaming, or everyone are actually have a sarcasm, this is the sign that something is wrong. And probably, if you will try to fix those people by going to one-on-ones and saying to them, this is not the right behavior, you are just infecting others, it wouldn't work, unfortunately, because you just have to realize you can't fix them. Again, postmortems. Here I wanted to stop a little bit more, because actually, as I said, there is plenty of companies using postmortems as a method to actually have a proper I would say it's retrospective of incident which happened in your system, in your product, anything. And actually, you need to be prepared, and I believe this is actually Agile coach job to prepare a workshop, because from my experience, first, when you try to implement this in your teams, they usually ask, okay, but can we just, I don't know, talk in Slack and say, this is the problem, this is the print screen of the log, what was wrong, and this is it. But it doesn't work like that. You should be, as a coach, I believe, preparing a small, maybe half an hour or 45 minutes workshop, and you should prepare criteria before actual incident occurs. So you shouldn't wait, okay, this is the major downtime, it's a problem, and like back to Hawaii example, okay, it's too late to fix something. But here you can be prepared. So you can just use some definition criteria which you can expose to your team, ask for their feedback. Probably developers knows more about data loss of any kind, or possible, like downtime is usually in your contracts and things like that. And then you will be coming prepared. So next, actually, I encourage you to maybe make a picture of the slide, because it's actually saying how you should run the workshop for postmortems. We're using it right now, but with some slight differences. But I would say it's a common thing, because you just can ask right question on that workshop and follow the simple rules. And of course, it's hard sometimes to convince your teams or management, but you can actually use this and say, okay, but Google is using it, and it works. And they're writing books about it, actually. So, yeah. And now back to engineering practices. This one would be a little bit more technical, but I encourage you to ask me more questions after my talk, and I will try to finish a little bit in advance. So this is my favorite, and it's called Automate and Enable Low-Risk Releases. What is low-risk releases from your perspective? Can you maybe help me to answer this question? What is low-risk releases in your understanding? No one doing releases?
Small updates, full updates.
Sorry. Okay. Actually, I agree and disagree. It might be critical features, but it's saying low risk in terms of releases, but not features. And it means that releasing is so easy and low risk that you can do it every second, basically. And it doesn't matter what is in release. Is it a huge feature, or is it a small change, or is it a bug fix, or something like that? Yeah. So let's continue. This is a quote from my favorite, actually, continuous delivery consultant. He is called Jess. He has a lot of talks on the YouTube regarding continuous delivery, while Agile will not work in the environments where you can continuously deliver, and things like that. So I encourage you to watch his videos on YouTube. But he's saying, you should be able to get the changes out at any time safely, quickly, and sustainably, without people burning out or working weekends or being a hero. This part, working weekends, being a hero. I remember when I was working in outsourcing, I worked in overall maybe 6 years in totally outsourcing environments. There was a culture actually, so okay, I probably will stay late today and fix this because then I will be feeling like a hero. And tomorrow my manager will come and say, oh, you know, poor you, you will probably have to rest more, but you are the hero, come on, everyone needs to follow you and do the same things next time we have a production bug or whatever, something critical actually. So yeah, this is a good quote, I think. This is also a good practice. It's called decoupled deployments from releases. This one I noticed many people, they misunderstood what is release and what is deploy. Deploy, it's mostly technical thing. It's actually that you can deploy some chunk of your code, or maybe you deploy it in the packages, or maybe you deploy in the whole product as a monolith. This can happen. It means that you can deploy it easily as a package. But if we are talking about releases, usually it's product manager who is involved. It might be marketing, sales. They need to provide the steps. For example, we in Izettle have a long list of release to-do list, which we need to actually prepare if we're changing something in the production code or releasing new, even small feature. So releases, it's actually much more than just deployments, and releases needs to be decoupled. Because deployments should happen, as I said before, it's like 1 second job. It should be automated, it should be easy to fix, it should be easy to roll out if something is wrong, and it should be quite technical. Yeah. So another one, I would say idea and solution is actually environment-based release patterns. If some of you worked as developers before, probably it's familiar. But if you even don't, I encourage you to read more about it, even if you're solely a manager, because it's useful to speak with developers in one language. It's called blue-green deployment and canary releases. So first, it's blue-green deployments. It's actually having, let's say you are rolling out some release with a major feature, which is important for your product, but you're scary because kind of you can break a lot of stuff, especially if you need to change database or there will be no backwards compatibility. It's very scary to do this thing. And instead of trying to actually, it's like a common suggestion, it's actually to have a previous state of your previous software somewhere, which you can easily change the link to. And by doing this router thing, you can easily roll back without any problems. And it should be like, back to the times, I remember rollback was like, okay, now I need to find my latest dump of the database on the Amazon or on my local computer, which is even worse. And then I have to check, is it the same or not the same? This shouldn't be the manual process at all. It should be automated. And you have to have a green state of your software and blue state of your software, which you can easily switch between. So this is what is called usually as a blue-green deployment. Then we have canary releases. Here you can see a miner which is taking in his head a canary. And usually back to the 1928, there was a practice. If there is a dangerous actually level of monoxide carbon, sorry, I have even a note about it because I'm usually not good in chemistry. And kind of you can't go to the mine if there is a high level of this carbon monoxide, and you will be dying actually. So you need to check it, and the easiest way to check was just take a canary with you. If she will die, probably you can't work there. And this is how it looks actually in the reality. It's called canary release pattern, and actually this is a Facebook example, how they still, as far as I know, roll out their features. They have in a new release package, they're using packages, so it's like a different domains in each packages, and they are rolling out to a small set of users. Even they can have an internal release, so-called, which is only for Facebook employees. Then they test for some time, and based on the feedback or bug fixing, they roll out to more, like small set of users, more users, And by using load balancer, they're changing the amount of users which are using the current package. So it's quite easy, and in this case, imagine that Facebook employee, it's your canary or whatever. Your employee is a canary, which you're kind of giving the software, checking with them. If everything is fine, then you're rolling out to all the users. Then there are another example, which is called application-based release patterns. This might be more familiar to you because it's about feature toggles, it's about dark launches and dog fooding. We at Izettle really everywhere using feature toggles and dark launches. I noticed that this helps us to build the safety in our teams because actually they always feel easy about release or deployment, and they don't feel like, oh no, I would rather postpone this new software release or this new feature release just because I'm afraid if I will roll out to 100% of all our users, it probably will be scary and there will be bugs. And it's always not enough of testing from their perspective. And using feature toggles actually help. This picture is perfectly showing what might be in the quick understanding of feature toggles. It's actually, you have a plenty of different small, big features, important features, not important features, but you can enable or disable them by using this mechanism on the software part of your system. This is how it works. And again, it could be, in our case, we're actually releasing, because we have mobile application, we have a backend system. Backend is built on microservices, so for microservices it's quite easy. We usually just have a framework for that, which enable and disable some features if we need to. For mobile application, actually we are releasing continuously everything that we are developing. Which means that if we don't want to show the end customers this new feature, we just implement the feature toggle. It might be just simple if and if statement, which is saying, okay, for this group of customers, please disable this. And it's quite easy, and it means that on our mobile applications, we have all the current code, and it's already integrated. It's not like it will be broken when we will finally decide to roll out this feature. So, yeah, but it depends. It's a lot of practices, techniques. There are some frameworks even existing on how to implement feature toggle functionality in your code base. Even if you're on monolith, it's not the problem, actually. And dog fooding. I don't know how many of you actually used Windows NT. There was an old version of Windows operating system. But the idea was that before releasing it to the end customers, actually Microsoft deciding to give it to their employees because they was, again, maybe too scared to release it, or they wanted to learn more without rolling up fully. And actually they had a joke about, like, it's like if you prepare something bad, you will probably not eat it. And why do you want your end user to use the system if it's not good, and if even you don't want to eat your dog's food? Here is another example. This example is mostly about dark lunches. Actually, it's quite interesting one. I encourage you to read more if you want to. Again, there is even presentations on the internet about how back to the, as far as I recall, it was back to 2008, February 2008, when Facebook has actually decided to first launch their Facebook chat, which is currently called Messenger. So what they did back to then, they started, overall this process took them from February to April, so it was not long, but they started with the existing Erlang backend functionality, and they just enabled this chat on the front end for one user. So back to the times, if you was registered on the Facebook, you would see only one friend whom you can connect to and write something. And there was this bubble message about, okay, this is the chat, it will be like that, what you can do with it, what does it mean. But it was very easy because they started with a small change of functionality, just the UI part. And then by doing this, they actually decided to allow it gradually to some small amount of users. So I remember, because I was a user of Facebook, I remember I had this, but let's say my friends, they didn't. They was surprised, like, why? Why do you have it? Is it because you're registered in the English version or something like that? It wasn't like that. It's just they picked the users for whom they actually enable it. And then they roll out to more users, and they actually did the performance testing at the same time, because they was not sure about Erlang backend. And it helped them, by gradually rollout, it helped them to verify the system, fix the bugs, and actually enable this functionality fully back to April 2008. Yes, and this thing actually called Gatekeeper. This is what they're using for this dark launches and feature toggles. It's the system they built in Facebook for doing the feature toggles and dark releases. Sorry. So, sorry, I have to take a... Yeah. So, this one, I would say it's important at the same time as an engineering practice and as a management practice. It's called the get the feedback on each step of your delivery process. I probably will not spend a lot of time explaining why feedback is important, but it's important at the same time when we talk about the retrospective, and also it's important when something is wrong with your release pipeline or deployment pipeline, or the way you're actually working with your software. Another one, I really enjoy using the slides from Toyota production line, as you already noticed. But I think this one is quite good because it's, I don't see, is it a button or not, but it's not showing the button. But usually they have this culture which is called jidoka. It's in Japanese, and it means that if you see that something is going wrong on your production line, let's say from previous employee you got something maybe broken or maybe something not perfect, you can always press the red button. It depends on the line. Usually I heard that they are using red buttons, so they are using chords actually. Thank you. So by using chords, they encourage their employees on production line to stop actually the flow of delivery. And instead of trying to deliver the more each second and each minute, to focus on fixing the problem on their production line. So, yeah, this is why I decided to talk about. Actually, there is a lot of books written about how Toyota implemented their production lines, about this culture of continuous improvement, and about jidoka in particular. So I encourage you maybe again to look for more information and to refer to it when it comes to your development pipeline and your flow of delivery. This is from XP practices. It's actually well known probably. It's task-driven development and behavior-driven development. Because, I have an experience working with the teams who had some legacy in their code base, and they was continuously asking, okay, can we have a time in the sprint or time in this iteration to fix some code and to refactor? And my question, I was saying, yes, of course, thank you that you raised this. Of course, we should improve the quality, not only the quantity. And then I'm asking, but how do you verify that your refactoring is not breaking anything? And usually people we will just test, or we will just, I don't know, run our automation test set or whatever. But usually people say, oh, we're not changing anything in particular in the UI. It will be the same, it just will be improved code. Then I'm asking, okay, but what about testing? What about unit tests? What's the benefit of writing tests in this situation? It's because you can actually, by doing refactoring, verify with your tests that you're not breaking something which was working before. Yeah, this is example because, again, from my experience, since I'm onboarding a lot of new team members in my teams, we have sometimes new employees coming and saying, okay, but I thought you're such a great company, I heard a lot about you, but I thought you have a better code coverage actually. Why don't you have so many unit tests as you could? Um, then another practice. Actually, it's called. I mixed it together because I wanted to talk about it in the same sense. It's pair and mob programming. We practicing both in iZettle, but I would say that mob is actually requires your environment be more safe to use for mob programming, because it's actually instead of pair programming, it's having a driver, but usually around that driver who is actually writing and implementing the code. You have not only developers, you have probably product manager, you might have designer, and actually you're encouraged to have more people from different expertises in your company, because then you can see and affect the decision which developer or driver is doing in the moment he or she is writing the code or developing the feature. And pair programming, of course, it's good if you're only doing pair programming, but if you're looking for something fresh, new, and with a little bit hype, more programming might be also interesting idea for your teams. Yeah, this is again inspirational image about pair programming. Usually, I like to see when people in my team are doing pair programming because they are so inspired. They're trying to convince the colleague that let's do this, or let's use some modern technology instead of that, or let's refactor or whatever. So even refactoring actually, in fact, are more beneficial when you have at least two people working on that refactoring, or doing the mob programming session on refactoring, or even we are having the practice of mob testing at iZettle. And continuous integration, delivery, or deployment. I noticed from my experience that integration is quite easy to understand because it's actually committing to the one branch of your code. Usually it's a master branch, and saying in technical words. But it doesn't matter even maybe you're not using GitHub or whatever flow. It's important just to integrate on each and every commit and have a smaller pull request if you're using pull requests, or have a smaller chance of code you're changing. So this is about integration. When it comes to delivery or deployment, I found that actually this picture is showing the perfect difference. Many people think that deployment is something actually less sexy in terms of continuous everything. And delivery is like a buzzword, and we should be doing continuous delivery. But in fact, it's both good if you're doing just continuous deployment or continuous delivery. And by looking on the slide, you can notice that delivery means that only one step is manual. It's deployed to production, which might be good, because if you have dark launches and if you have feature toggles, sometimes you might make a decision to deploy to some group of your customers. Or let's say how we're doing this in iZettle, we are choosing the market. Usually it's UK or Sweden or both. And the percentage of users, it might be handpicked users like 100 merchants, or it might be like a percentage. And this is continuous delivery actually. And when it comes to continuous deployment, it's when all the steps are automated, not only like some. And integration is built and tested. Quite easy. And last but not the least, we're so busy managing impressions that we don't contribute to innovating. And this is sad reality. And this is something, again, about blameless meetings and some safe environment which you can try to build and encourage others to be honest. So, conclusions. Psychological safety. This is the slide. I was inspired a lot by modern agile actual movement from Joshua Kerievsky. And I liked back to times one of his presentations when he talked about safety in those simple bricks. So it actually exists in your teams when you're not afraid to be yourself, take risks, make mistakes, raise problems, ask questions, and disagree. I hope that after this talk, you will be a little bit more ready to make safety as a prerequisite in your teams. Thank you.